The snow had buried the world so completely that even sound seemed afraid to move. The valley lay drowned in white, an endless hush of frozen earth and bowed pine trees, their branches bent low beneath the weight of winter. Wind crept through the forest in long, hollow breaths, whispering through the needles like a voice that had forgotten its words. The river beyond the ridge was no longer a river at all, just a wide, pale scar of ice, cracked and silent, locked in place by the cold. A single cabin sat at the edge of the timberline, smoke rising thin and gray from its chimney, the only sign of life for miles. Inside that cabin lived Elias Crow. He had learned long ago how to move through winter like a shadow. Slow, careful, quiet. A man did not fight the frontier. He survived it by listening to it, by respecting it, by knowing when to stand and when to bow. Elias pulled on his heavy wool coat, the fabric stiff with frost and age. The leather of his gloves was cracked from years of cold and labor. His boots, mended more times than he could remember, left deep prints in the snow as he stepped outside. The cold struck his face like a blade. He did not flinch. The morning sky was iron gray, heavy with the promise of more snow. His horse stood near the fence, head lowered, breath rising in pale clouds. Elias moved with the same quiet rhythm he had kept for years. Feeding the horse, checking the latch on the gate, tightening the rope on the woodpile. Life on the frontier did not allow for softness. It allowed only for persistence. The wind shifted. With it came a thought he had been holding back. Jonah Hale, his neighbor. If the word neighbor could be used for a man who lived nearly 2 miles away through forest and frozen ravine, Jonah had not been well when Elias last saw him. Thin, shaking, a cough that sounded too deep, too hollow. The kind of cough that stayed in a man's chest like a shadow and never left. Elias had brought him dried meat and a sack of grain a week before. Jonah had barely been able to stand. The frontier taught a man many things, but one lesson came quick and hard. If someone stopped needing help, it was usually because they were already dead. Elias saddled his horse without ceremony. No rush, no hesitation, just a quiet understanding that some things had to be done whether a man wanted to do them or not. The trail to Jonah's cabin was nearly swallowed by snow. Tree limbs sagged overhead, heavy with ice. The forest felt closed in tight, as if the land itself were watching him pass. The wind grew stronger, the cold deeper, the silence heavier. When Jonah's cabin finally came into view, it looked wrong. No smoke, no tracks, no movement, just a dark shape against the white, half buried by drifting snow. Elias dismounted slowly. The door was not locked. It creaked open with a tired, wooden groan. Cold air spilled from inside. The cabin smelled of sickness and old smoke and death waiting its turn. Jonah lay on the bed, little more than bone and breath. His eyes were sunken. His skin was gray. His lips were cracked and dry. "Elias," he whispered. The voice barely existed. Elias moved to the bed and knelt beside him. "You should have sent word," Elias said quietly. Jonah tried to laugh. It came out as a broken cough. Didn't have strength. His eyes shifted toward the corner of the room, then back. His fingers twitched. "Didn't mean for her to—" His voice faded. Elias leaned closer. "For who?" Jonah swallowed with effort. His chest shuddered. "My wife," he whispered. "My bride." The word felt wrong in the room. Elias frowned slightly. Jonah had never spoken of a wife. Never spoken of anyone. "She's outside," Jonah breathed. "Cold. I couldn't." His eyes filled with something like shame. Then his gaze went still. Not dead. Not yet. But close enough that death could hear him breathing. Elias stood. The wind howled outside the cabin walls. And then, a sound. Not the wind. Not the trees. Something else. Faint. Thin. A sound that did not belong to the storm. Elias stepped outside. The snow stung his face. The wind tore at his coat. The world was white and moving and loud. Then he saw it. A shape. Low. Half buried in a drift. Still. Too still. At first, it looked like a shadow in the snow. Then it moved. Just barely. Elias ran. His boots broke through drifts as he crossed the open ground. The wind fought him, clawed at him, tried to turn him back. He dropped to his knees beside the shape. It was a woman. Her hair was frozen into her coat. Her lashes were white with frost. Her hands were bare, blue with cold. Her lips were cracked and bloodless. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing was shallow, so shallow it barely stirred the snow on her face. She was alive, but only just. Elias slid one arm beneath her shoulders, the other beneath her knees. She was light, too light, the kind of light that came from hunger and sickness and neglect. The wind screamed around them. The snow fell harder. The world closed in. And for the first time in many years, Elias Crow felt fear that had nothing to do with winter. He turned toward his cabin, toward the fire, toward the only warmth in a frozen world, and carried her into the storm. The fire was already dying when Elias reached his cabin. Its glow was weak, barely holding back the cold that pressed against the walls like a living thing. The wind howled through cracks in the logs, forcing icy breath into every corner of the room. Elias kicked the door shut behind him and crossed the floor in long strides, the woman's weight light in his arms, fragile as a child's. Snow fell from her clothes in slow, melting drops, darkening the rough wooden planks beneath his boots. He laid her on the thick wool blanket near the hearth. For a moment, he just looked at her. Her face was pale, almost colorless. Her skin bore the blue-gray shadow of cold. Her dark hair was tangled and stiff with ice. Her lashes clung together with frost. Her chest rose and fell so faintly it seemed like the fire itself might stop it if it burned too hard. She did not look like a frontier woman. Her hands were not calloused. Her skin was not weathered. There was a softness to her that did not belong to the wilderness. Elias moved without thought. He fed the fire, piling on dry wood until flames leapt and cracked, filling the cabin with orange light. Heat rolled outward, slow and steady, pushing the coal back inch by inch. Steam rose from her clothes as the ice began to melt. He removed her coat carefully, the fabric stiff and frozen. Her dress beneath was thin, worn, not made for winter. The kind of cloth meant for warmer places, safer places. He wrapped her in blankets, set a kettle over the fire, knelt beside her and checked her breathing. Still there, still fragile, still holding on. Time moved strangely in the cabin. The storm outside roared, but inside there was only firelight and the sound of water beginning to simmer. Her lips moved. A sound escaped them. Not a word. A breath shaped like fear. Elias leaned closer. Her eyes fluttered open. They were dark and glassy, unfocused, lost in pain and cold and confusion. She tried to speak. Nothing came out. He lifted the kettle and poured warm water into a cup, letting it cool. When he touched it to her lips, she flinched at first, then drank in small, trembling sips. Color did not return, but the blue faded a little. Her breathing deepened. Tears slid from the corners of her eyes, silent and helpless. "I won't let you freeze," Elias said quietly. His voice was rough and used a softness. She stared at him as if she did not understand the words. Only the sound. Only the tone. Only the safety in it. Minutes passed. Then more. Her body began to shiver. Not the violent, death-cold shiver, but the kind that came when warmth returned too fast to frozen skin. Elias watched her carefully. "Easy," he murmured. "Slow." She whispered something. It took him a moment to hear it. "Cold," she said. Her voice was barely more than breath. "I know," he answered. The fire cracked. The kettle steamed. The cabin filled with the smell with smoke and wet cloth and heat. Her eyes closed again. But she did not fade this time. Later, how much later, Elias could not tell, her voice came again, clearer. "Where am I?" "In my cabin," he said. "You're safe." She swallowed. "My husband—" The word trembled in her mouth. Elias hesitated. "What's your name?" he asked instead. There was a long silence. Then, "Anna," she whispered. The name felt small in the big, cold world. "Anna," Elias repeated. Her eyes filled again. "He was sick," she said. "So sick. I tried to help him. I did." Her voice broke. "They told me I would have a home," she whispered. "They told me I would have a family." Elias said nothing. The fire spoke for him. "They sent me here," she continued, her voice shaking. by letter, by promise, by words on paper. Her breathing hitched. I didn't know him. I didn't know the land. I didn't know the cold. She turned her face slightly toward the wall. He stopped talking to me, she whispered. Stop looking at me. He got weaker. I got smaller. A tear slid into her hair. I thought I was his wife, she said. A pause. I think I was just ashamed. The words settled heavy in the room. Mail order bride. Elias did not know the term, but he understood the truth of it. A woman sent like cargo. Promised safety. Delivered into isolation. Left in a dying man's cabin, in a frozen world that did not know her name. He told me to go outside, she whispered. Said I would make him sicker. Said the cold would be quick. Her voice fractured. I thought maybe God would take me faster than the snow. Silence followed. Not empty silence. Heavy silence. The kind that carried grief and anger and sorrow inside it. Elias stared at the fire. His jaw tightened. He had seen men die. Seen families starve. Seen winters take children. But this was a different kind of cruelty. Not violent. Not loud. Just quiet. Neglect. Forgetting. Letting a human being disappear into the cold. Because caring took more strength than dying. You're not forgotten, he said. The words came before he thought about them. Anna turned her face back toward him. Her eyes met his. For the first time, they were clear. You don't know me, she whispered. Elias met her gaze. I know you're alive, he said, and that's enough. The firelight danced across the walls. Outside, the storm still raged. Inside, warmth had begun its slow, stubborn work, not just in her body, but in the space between two broken lives that the frontier had never meant to bring together. The storm did not end. It thickened. Snow stacked against the cabin walls like a rising tide. Wind pressed against the logs in long, relentless waves, making the wood groan and creak as if the house itself were breathing in pain. The world beyond the windows disappeared into white blindness. Inside, time lost its meaning. There was only firelight and the fragile rhythm of Anna's breath. Her fever came in the night. Elias woke to the sound of her voice breaking into the dark. Not words, cries, low and frightened, torn loose from her throat like something hunted. Her skin burned beneath his hands. Too hot, too dry, too still. He fed the fire higher, then backed it down again, careful not to choke the air with heat. He soaked cloth in melted snow and laid it across her forehead, her wrists, her neck. She shivered even as sweat soaked her skin. Her eyes fluttered open and shut. She whispered names that did not belong to the cabin. A mother, a father, a home that existed only in memory. Her body fought itself. Elias stayed, hour after hour, night after night. He did not sleep, did not leave the cabin, did not listen to the storm. The frontier had taught him many kinds of waiting. The waiting for thaw, the waiting for harvest, the waiting for death. But this waiting was different. This was not patience. This was hope refusing to lie down. He boiled water, crushed herbs he had learned to gather in better seasons, held the cup to her lips. Sometimes she drank. Sometimes she could not. Sometimes she did not know him. Sometimes she called him a stranger. Sometimes she clutched his coat, as if the world were trying to take her away again. Outside, wolves howled from the timberline. Inside, the fire cracked and popped. The cabin smelled of smoke, sweat, steam, and medicine. The cold did not leave. It pressed against the walls without mercy. The frontier did not care who lived and who died. It only waited. Days passed, or nights. Elias could not tell which. His beard grew thick. His eyes burned from smoke and exhaustion. But he stayed. One morning, the fever broke. Not sudden, not clean, just a slow easing, like a storm losing its strength mile by mile. Her skin cooled. Her breathing steadied. The trembling stopped. Her eyes opened and stayed open. She looked at him, not through him, not past him, at him. You're still here, she whispered. Elias nodded. Yes. Her eyes filled with tears. Not fear this time. Relief. The kind that came when a soul finally believed it had not been abandoned again. After that, healing became work instead of war. She was weak, too weak, to stand, too weak to hold a cup without shaking. Elias helped her sit, helped her drink, helped her eat thin broth. Each movement was slow, measured, careful, her body a fragile thing trying to remember how to live. The storm eased, but winter remained. Snow still covered the world. Ice still locked the river. The wolves still roamed the timberline. But something inside the cabin had changed. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt occupied by breath, by presence, by life. At night, Elias sat by the fire and mended gear. Anna slept beneath heavy blankets. Sometimes she woke in fear. Sometimes she reached for him without knowing she did it. He never pulled away, never spoke, just stayed. The frontier demanded strength, but it had never taught him tenderness. This was new. One evening, when the fire burned low and the wind whispered instead of howled, she spoke. "I thought I would die out there," she said quietly. "I almost did," Elias replied. She swallowed. "Why didn't you leave me?" she asked. The question was not accusation. It was confusion. He considered it. "I found you," he said simply. "That's all." She watched him. "You didn't know who I was." "No." "You didn't know me anything." "No." Silence. Then, "People don't usually do that," she said. Elias stared into the fire. "The frontier doesn't usually allow it," he answered. Her hands tightened in the blanket. "You saved me," she whispered. He shook his head. "You survived," he said. "I just didn't let the cold finish the job." The firelight moved across his face, across the walls, across the low ceiling beams, across a room that no longer felt like a place of solitude, but a place of shelter. Outside, the land remained cruel. Inside, something quiet and stubborn was growing. Not love, not yet, not even trust, but the beginning of something rarer in a broken world. Safety. The days began to take shape again, not as time, as rhythm. Fire in the morning, snow at the door, water to be melted, wood to be cut, food to be shared. Anna learned the cabin the way one learns a new body, slowly, carefully, afraid of breaking something that could not yet heal. At first, Elias would not let her stand without his arm near her. Her legs trembled like a newborn foal's. The floor felt too far away, the world too large. But the frontier did not allow gentleness for long. Each day, she stood a little longer. Each day, she walked a little farther. Each day, her strength returned in small, stubborn pieces. The cabin filled with quiet life. The sound of a kettle, the crack of wood, the scrape of boots, the soft rhythm of breath that no longer feared the night. Elias showed her how to hold a knife safely, how to tend the fire, how to hang herbs near the rafters, how to listen to the wind and know when a storm was coming. She showed him nothing practical, but she brought something else. Sound, not noise, not chatter, but presence. The cabin no longer felt like a place where silence waited. It felt like a place where silence rested. They shared meals without hurry. Simple food, broth, bread, dried meat, stew thick with root vegetables. They ate by firelight, steam rising from their bowls. The cold kept at bay by flame and closeness. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they did not. And neither felt empty. One afternoon, snow fell gently instead of violently. The world outside softened. The sky lightened. The forest stood still. Anna stood at the door, wrapped in Elias's spare coat, watching the flakes drift down. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Elias stood behind her. "It kills things," he said quietly. She nodded. "But it's still beautiful," she replied. He had no answer for that. Days turned into weeks, not marked by calendars, marked by strength, by color returning to her face, by steadiness in her step, by the way she began to move through the cabin as if she belonged to it. She began to help without being asked, sweeping the floor, mending cloth, preparing food, filling the kettle, not as duty, as participation, as belonging. The cabin changed, not in structure, in feeling. It no longer felt like a man's shelter. It felt like a home being formed by two lives instead of one. At night, when the wind howled and the wolves cried from the forest, Fear returned to her eyes. Sometimes she woke gasping. Sometimes she whispered in another language. Sometimes she cried without knowing why. Elias never asked, never demanded explanation. He simply sat by her side. The frontier had taught him that pain did not need questions to exist. It only needed space. One evening, as firelight danced across the walls, she spoke. "I thought a husband meant safety," she said. Elias listened. "I thought marriage meant belonging," she continued. "I thought love would come later." She smiled faintly. It never came at all. Silence followed. Not heavy, not tense, just real. "I don't know what I am now," she whispered. Elias looked at her. "You're alive," he said. "That's enough for today." Her eyes filled, not with sorrow, with gratitude, a quiet, aching gratitude that did not need words. The frontier taught people to survive. It did not teach them how to heal. But healing was happening anyway, slowly, softly, in the space between shared meals, in the warmth of firelight, in the quiet trust that formed without promises, without vows, without names, not romance, not yet, something older, something deeper, human connection, found family, chosen shelter, the kind that forms when two broken lives meet in a world that breaks everyone. Outside, the land remained harsh. Inside, something gentle was being built, not in grand gestures, not in dramatic words, but in daily acts of care, in silence, in patience, in presence. The cabin had become more than shelter. It had become a place where fear did not rule the night, a place where the cold could not reach the soul, a place where two forgotten people were slowly learning what it meant to belong again. The past does not stay buried, not even under snow. It waits, it listens, and when a life begins to grow again, it rises to meet it. The morning the truth came back to the cabin. The sky was clear and pale, stretched thin like frost over glass. The snow had hardened overnight, crusted with ice that cracked under Elias's boots as he stepped outside to split wood. The forest was quiet, too quiet. No wind, no birds, no sound but iron on timber. It was the kind of silence that felt watchful. Elias felt it before he saw it. Tracks, not his, not Anna's, not animal. Boot prints, fresh, leading from the tree line toward the cabin. He followed them slowly, his hand drifting toward the rifle beside the door. The frontier taught men to trust instinct more than hope. The prince circled the cabin once, then moved away, toward the river trail. Someone had been watching. When he went inside, Anna saw his face. "What is it?" she asked. "Nothing," he said, but his voice had changed. The quiet fear that followed did not leave. 2 days later, riders came. 3 men, hard faces, long coats, horses thin from winter. Their eyes scanned the cabin the way wolves scan a herd, not with curiosity, with assessment. They did not smile. They did not greet. "You're Elias Crow," one of them said. Elias nodded. "We're looking for a woman," the man continued. "Came west by contract. Marriage arrangement. Paid for by a man named Jonah Hale." Anna froze. Her hands tightened around the mug she was holding. The cup trembled. Elias felt the shift in the room. "She's not here," Elias said calmly. The man smiled, not kindly. "Frontier law don't favor hiding property," he said. "Property." The word landed like a blade. "She's not property," Elias said. The man shrugged. "She's a contract." Anna stepped forward. "I will go," she said quietly. Elias turned. "No," he said. She met his eyes. "I don't want trouble for you," she whispered. "I don't want blood on your hands." Elias felt something rise in his chest. Anger, fear, attachment, the kind he had sworn never to grow again. "She stays," he said. The men shifted, hands near weapons, horses restless. "Careful," one of them said. "You're one man in a cold valley." Elias did not move. "So is she," he replied. The silence stretched. Heavy, dangerous. Then, a sound from the forest. Not wind, not animal. Hooves. More riders. Local settlers. Men who knew Elias. Men who knew the land. Men who had survived winters together. They approached slowly, watched the strangers. The balance changed. The contract men looked around, measured, calculated, decided. "This ain't finished," the leader said. They turned their horses, rode away. The threat did not vanish, but it retreated. For now, inside the cabin, Anna broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. The kind of breaking that came from exhaustion, from fear, from believing safety never lasts. "I will always be hunted," she whispered. Always claimed, always owned. Elias knelt in front of her. "You're not owned," he said. "You're not claimed. You're not a thing," she cried. The storm returned that night. Wind, snow, darkness, fear. Inside the cabin, they faced a different storm. Emotional truth. Fear of loss. Fear of attachment. Fear of hope. "I can't stay if I bring danger," she said. Elias answered quietly. "I can't live if I let you leave." The words shocked them both. Silence followed. Not empty. Full. Heavy. Honest. The frontier had taken his family. Taken his past. Taken his youth. He had survived by staying alone. By staying closed. By staying untouched. But now something had grown, and it demanded courage. Not the courage to fight, but the courage to care. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, two souls stood at the edge of change. One afraid to belong, one afraid to lose. And both standing in a world that had never been gentle with anyone. The storm broke before dawn. Not suddenly, not violently, just slowly, like a tired thing giving up its strength. Snow still fell, but lighter now, softer. The wind no longer screamed. It whispered. The world outside the cabin emerged again, pale and quiet, reshaped but not destroyed. Elias stood at the window, watching the first gray light stretch across the valley. Behind him, Anna slept, not the restless, frightened sleep of before, but deep, still, the kind that comes when fear loosens its grip, when the body believes it will wake again. The fire burned low, a steady red glow in the hearth. The cabin smelled of smoke and pine and warmth, of life. Elias felt the weight of choice in his chest. Not fear, not anger, responsibility. The kind that comes with love. Even when love has not yet found its name, he stepped outside. The cold met him, but it no longer felt cruel. It felt honest. The valley stretched wide and white. The forest stood tall and silent. The river lay frozen, but not dead. Everything slept, but everything waited. When he returned inside, Anna was awake. She sat up slowly, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "Did they come back?" she asked softly. "No," Elias said. "Will they?" she asked. "Maybe," he answered honestly. She nodded, then asked a harder question. "And me?" Elias crossed the room, knelt in front of her, met her eyes. "You stay?" he said. Not as command, not as ownership, as invitation, as choice, as promise. Her breath caught. "Not as someone's contract," he continued. "Not as someone's burden, not as someone's mistake." She watched him. "You stay as yourself." Tears filled her eyes. Not fear, not sorrow. Release. "I don't know how to live a life that isn't running," she whispered. Elias answered quietly. "Then we learn it. Together." Spring did not come quickly. The frontier never hurried for anyone, but it came, slowly, in softened snow, in dripping ice, in swollen rivers, in green breaking through white. The valley changed, and so did they. The cabin grew warmer, the days longer, the nights less cruel. They planted a small garden, not much, just enough. They repaired the fence, strengthened the roof, built a second bed frame, not out of fear, out of future. The world did not suddenly become safe. Men still rode the trails. Laws still favored contracts over compassion. Winter still returned. But something had shifted. They were no longer alone, not against the land, not against the cold, not against the world. They faced it together. One morning, months later, Anna stood outside the cabin, watching the sunrise spill gold across the valley. Elias joined her. She took his hand, not in desperation, not in fear, in peace, in choice, in belonging. I was forgotten once, she said. Elias squeezed her fingers. You're not now. The wind moved gently through the trees. The river flowed again. The cabin stood firm against the land. Two figures stood at the doorway, not hiding from the world, not running from the past, but rooted, present, alive. The frontier had tried to swallow them both. Winter had tried to erase them. Loneliness had tried to claim them. But kindness had been stronger. Choice had been stronger. Love, quiet, slow, unspoken, had been stronger. And in a land that took more than it gave, two forgotten souls built something the wilderness could not take away. A home, a family, a life, together.